Welcome to Aviation Branding Trends for 2019. I'm Paula Williams.
I'm John Williams.
And we are ABCI, and ABCI's mission is
to help you ladies and gentlemen out there sell more products in the aviation world. I hope this isn't going to be an outtake.
Right, exactly. So, why is branding important to help you sell more products and services in the aviation world?
I'm sure you're going to tell us.
Right. I mean, if things didn't need to be branded, if everything was exactly the same, then it would just be like cans of beans on the shelf at the grocery store. Oh, wait, those are branded too. And I always get the expensive ones because the store brands always have stems and stuff in there, right?
Uh-huh.
So brands are very important. They denote quality, they denote trust, they denote relationships, they denote a lot of different things that make us feel a lot more comfortable parting with our hard-earned cash, right?
Yeah, if there were no difference, then you could buy a rice rocket or a Indian or
a Harley or
and all be happy.
Suzuki,
all the same stuff, right?
Right? Yeah, exactly. But they all have very different connotations and very different reasons for those kinds of things. And aviation is a very high trust environment. So branding becomes even more important, even though most of us don't have huge audiences like a Coke or a Pepsi or a Harley Davidson, right?
Correct.
So we're going to talk about branding trends in 2019, how to update your brand and make it more contemporary, more effective, more of those things without spending a ton of money on it, right?
True.
Okay. Cool. So first thing we want to mention is that your customers own your brand. You don't own your brand. You just try to influence it, right?
Seriously?
Yeah. Your brand is what your customers think when they think of your company, your product, your service, everything else.
Uh-huh.
So
Keep
you don't
talking.
own it. Okay. We're also going to talk about upscale versus mass market, logos and other icons, visual devices, and things like that, and some things that you can do to make yours a little bit more upscale.
So none of this talk about market penetration and that kind of stuff.
Nope. It's all branding today. All branding all the time. And the third thing we're going to talk about is having multiple logo variations and why you might want them. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this episode has been brought to you by our brand refresh.
Well, it has been yet.
Well, it is being brought to you by, we're recording it right now, but it will be brought to you by our Aviation Brand Refresh service. And this is a product or service that we provide a lot of times in conjunction with our website refresh.
True.
When people have a website refresh done, that's often a great time to update their brand, update their logos, make sure their colors are all consistent across all of the materials that they use, make sure the fonts they use are consistent across all of the materials they use. All of those things that are kind of visual cues that help you have a more consistent and more effective brand.
Yeah, and updating the logo doesn't mean changing it exactly. It could mean it's something as simple as making it, what do they call that word, expands?
Vector art?
Vector art, yes.
Right, making sure that it's in the right formats so that when you have printing done or when you're using it on a responsive website, which all of our websites should be responsive nowadays, right?
Exactly.
Which means it changes size. So if you look at a website on your phone, it's going to look different, but still good. And when you look at it on a big screen TV, like we have here, you're going to see something that's very different, but still looks good. That's what responsive design is, means it changes based on where it's shown, right?
These are monitors, not TVs.
Oh, exactly.
Yes.
Same idea, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Sprinklers. That's okay. All right. So your customers own your brand. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this. Nowadays, your customers can do anything they darn well please on the internet, and they will, right?
Uh-huh.
And your brand means whatever it means to them. So if they have had lousy experiences getting their luggage where it's going using Delta, somebody with more time on their hands than good sense.
Don't tell me you got this off the internet.
I did get this off the internet. I just grabbed this from one of the social media accounts that I follow. Somebody had an opinion that Delta stands for don't expect luggage to arrive, right? And it looks like a Delta logo. This looks like an official thing. People can and will do what they want with your brand. Your only job and your only influence is to make them want to do good stuff with your brand, right?
But to be fair to Delta,
Exactly.
I've flown Delta, and when airline-wise, they're pretty much exclusively since the mid-'80s, and I've only had my baggage not arrive once out of 2 million miles flown.
Right, but most of those million miles flown, you have not checked baggage.
Oh, yes, I did.
Did you?
I used to check baggage all the time up until maybe 10 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, we usually never check baggage if we can help it. We send things ahead or do other things just so that we don't have to check baggage. But yeah, to be fair, Delta, this is probably a completely unfair and unrealistic situation that may be based on one experience that somebody had, and they happen to have Photoshop and they happen to be able to grab Delta's logo and use the same fonts and match the colors and make it look really official. Anybody can do anything with your brand nowadays, and if somebody does, you can always do a cease and desist and things like that, but really, what good does that do you, right?
Exactly.
The best thing to do if something bad happens with your brand is to address the problem, make sure that person's situation is resolved, and publicize the heck out of how you resolve the situation and try to not let that happen again, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you don't have control of your brand. You never did, to be honest. But even more now that everybody has Photoshop, everybody has a computer, everybody has the tools that it takes to broadcast something about your brand, you don't own it anymore, right? You just influence it. So get used to it, right? Okay. So now let's talk about what we can do to make our brands more likely to be used in good ways and more likely to be noticed in good ways. Let's look at some mass market logos. These are modern logos. Most of them have been updated in the last year and a half or two. And there's a lot of really cool things about these logos. A lot of them are kind of three-dimensional. A lot of them are very detailed. A lot of them are very colorful. Lots of things you can notice about these. What?
You don't have Tesla up there.
Tesla is not a mass market brand.
Really?
No, it's an upscale brand.
Well, 109 couples in this country, as of today, and when I read it in the paper, have named their kids Tesla.
Really?
After the car.
After the car, not after Nikolai Tesla, the old
no, they wrote in
inventor dude.
No.
Okay.
So it may not be a mass market thing, but...
All right. Okay, so these are mass market. They're actually aimed at people in the middle class, right?
Okay.
Okay. So now let's look at some upscale and luxury logos and see if we can see some differences. So these are our upscale and luxury logos. What are some of the differences that you notice?
Single color.
Right? Okay. A lot less color. Okay.
Not as busy.
Yep. Very geometric, I would say.
Simplistic.
Right. And they all include the name.
Oh, yeah.
Either as initials or as words, But there's a lot of initials and verbs here. There's letters more than anything else. There's not a lot of abstract shapes, not a lot of color.
Yeah, corporate name and the logo itself.
Right. So when you think about luxury brands, I like to think about it as, a little gold tag that's going to hang on somebody's handbag or a briefcase or whatever. If it doesn't fit on a little gold tag that fits on somebody's handbag or briefcase or whatever, it doesn't really work as an upscale logo, right? So all of these are things that are copied a million times by the Chinese, and other folks that copy intellectual property. But the point is they're worth copying, and the reason they're worth copying is because these brands are worth a lot of money. They charge a lot more for the same product than a mass market logo, right?
They would argue this is not the same product, but I understand what you mean.
Right, but they will say that it's a dog whistle, if we can use that word, to quality, It's supposed to communicate several things. It's supposed to communicate status. It's supposed to communicate quality. It's supposed to communicate a guarantee and service. So if you have a Tumi bag that breaks, you can get fantastic service on those things. I've tried to break mine many times and failed to not get a new one or not get good service every time I've broken my Tumi bag, which is not very often, right?
Just once, as far as I know.
Exactly. So upscale and luxury logos, those are some of the differences. So, we talked about fewer colors, more abstract, more emphasis on the name or, the initials of the company, and more white space is the other thing. Sure. Most of them have brand guidelines where they require that there be a certain amount of space around their logo so their logo is not crowded in with other things. So you're not going to see a Gucci logo crowded next to a bunch of other logos on one of those marathon T-shirts, as an example, or a race car driver's uniform and things like that. If they can't get a big space or a full page ad in a magazine or whatever, they're not going to do it because they need to have, their brand requires more white space around their logo. And that's a really good way to upscale eyes, if you want to say that. If you want to upgrade your logo, those are some of the things that you can do to make it look more upscale. All right, so let's talk about some brand variations and evolution. A lot of people think if you have a logo or a trademark or a brand, it has to stay the same forever in order to carry that brand recognition forward, right?
Used to, probably.
Okay.
If you look at Coke, it hasn't changed.
Oh, yes, it has. I didn't use Coke as an example because I wanted to use airlines, but the Coca-Cola logo, if you look at the 1919
it's very
logo,
subtle then.
right, versus the current logo, not the name of the company, but the logo, it is very different than it was to start with. So now I'm going to have to go find a slide and put it into the show notes for this that shows the evolution of the Coca-Cola logo. But this is the evolution of the United Airlines logo. Very recognized brand in the aviation industry. Started out, and most of them did, if you have a company that's more than 100 years old, your initial logo probably was constrained by the printing technology at the time, right?
This is not 100 years old.
Okay, 1927 versus 2027. Okay, that's not 100 years old. But still...
I'm just glad you know all this stuff.
It's long enough ago. In 1927, they did not have the printing technology that they do in 2019.
That's true.
That's almost 100 years, right? 90 years. So a lot of times it will have fewer colors, once again, going back to that old scale thing. Mm-hmm. So, that's something you can think about. If you want to upscale your logo and you want to tie it back to the past, you can look at your previous logos if you have a really old company, and that's one way to make it more upscale and more retro and cooler in the process.
Of course, we've only been around since 2006-ish,
Mm-hmm.
but our logo hasn't changed.
No, our logo has not changed. And we think about it every year. We've added some visual elements to our branding, but we haven't changed our logo.
Right.
I will talk about some of the variations on our logo, though.
Oh, yeah, we have variations.
Okay. Right. Okay, so then 1933, they wanted to communicate, now they are nationwide, coast to coast. So they added the United States in their little circle. 1936, they went with kind of a shield-looking thing.
Like a highway sign.
Like a highway sign. Still with the United States in there, right? United States, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. 1939, they added the word airlines and they got rid of the map of the U.S. 1941, they simplified a little bit more, made some straighter lines and other things. 1945, they brightened the colors, changed things around a little bit. 1952, changed the colors to be a little more fashionable to the 50s, right? That turquoise there. 1961, they made their name really big because they could exit. The printing technology at the time was such that you could break out of shapes, so mm-hmm. You could do some different printing things in 1961 that you couldn't do before. 1974, big change, right? Mm-hmm. This is the logo that we recognize now, where you see the U with a blue swoosh down and a red swoosh up. If you're listening to this, I'm hoping that you're following along. with the name underneath and kind of block letters. And then in 1993, they went to more of a serif font. It looks more like a masthead for a newspaper. And then in 1997, they went back to that block print.
And dropped the word airlines.
Right, and dropped the word airlines because now it's United Freight Services and many other things as well as airlines. So, huge evolution. If you look at the 1927 logo versus the current logo, you wouldn't know it was from the same company. Same thing with a lot of other brands, you know. You don't have to have the same logo all the way through, but a couple of things that did stay the same: name of the company, colors, always red, white, and blue, and black, and white. U, there's always a U in there. Otherwise, anything goes pretty much, right?
Yep.
Okay. So you can be pretty flexible with your brand as long as it's fairly well recognized and as long among your target audience. Once again, that might be 100 people. That might be 1,000 people. That might be 10,000 people. If you're not United Airlines, that's everybody in the world, right? Or at least everybody in the United States. Okay. Now let's talk about some multiple brand variations. We talked about responsive websites earlier, where you have a logo that looks good this big, this big, this big, right? In a lot of cases, you're actually even going to have a thing called a fave icon, which is 16 pixels. That's the thing if you're using Safari or Firefox or pretty much any browser, it's the thing that shows up on the tab for your website. And a lot of people never change that. If you're using Squarespace or something like that, you know, it's just the Squarespace icon. You don't have the opportunity to change that. But if you have a custom website through us
what we make,
or through anyone else, then we create a 16 by 16 version of, it's an icon that represents your company. This is not your logo. This is a variation on your logo because most people can't scooch their logo down to 16 pixels and still have it look good. So it is a really good idea to have an expanded version of your logo for when you want to use it for something really large like a cover sheet or like those folders we send out and other things. It's nice to have an expanded version. And it's nice to have a simplified version that is going to give you the opportunity to put it in places where it otherwise wouldn't look good. We had some engraving done for stationery and also for some leather work that we had done, some custom portfolios that we had done, and we had to simplify our logo because there's a gradient in it.
Right.
So we had to take that gradient out because, with
engraving tools, they don't have it.
Yeah, with engraving tools and with
gold inlay.
Yeah, exactly. Any kind of stamping or gold inlay or anything like that, it's either a positive or a negative, right? There's nothing in between. So in a lot of cases, you have to have an absolute black and white version of your logo with no gradients, no gray, no nothing. So you might want to have that as one of your options for simplification of your logo. So when you have a logo done through us or through anyone else, you might want to have 2 or 3 different versions of your logo created, where you've got the option to use that in different ways. And one of them's your logo, usually the medium one, but then you have larger and smaller ones. This is how Google, they have more fun with logos than anybody I know, right? Every time you go to Google, it's a different holiday or whatever, they have a different version of their logo. And a lot of times if you see it in a different place, on a t-shirt, on a billboard, on a postcard, anywhere else, you're going to see a slightly different version. It always has those colors, so you want to decide, here are the rules about our logo. We're always going to have the same colors in the same order, right? But otherwise, anything goes, pretty much, right? So you want to have it recognizable but different. And you can see this is like the anniversary of the Lego, some music thing. This is Beatrix Potter's birthday. What is this? Oh, that's the Super Collider, the Hadron Super Collider in Switzerland. Yeah. Hadron Super Collider. So they celebrate a lot of things using their logo, and they have the opportunity to do that because they have millions of people seeing their logo every day. For aviation companies, I wouldn't recommend doing this differently every day, but there are some things that you can do Chase Aviation is a really good example. They have their regular logo, right? They have one that they use as a patch on jackets and other things, on flight bombers. They have that. It's pretty cool. Since some of the work that they do is with vintage aircraft, that's a really fun thing. And they also do a fun thing for Christmas. They have a Christmas logo that they use on Christmas cards and their website and social media and everything else. So if your logo is simple enough, you can also have variations made for different things like Christmas, and if you have a special sale or if you have a special situation going on, an anniversary, other things like that. Making a change to your logo is a really visible way to do that. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so some variations to consider. You might want to have a horizontal version for certain things, a vertical or a stacked logo if you ever want to have a banner in a trade show, one of those tall things.
Right.
Something that looks good that way. A simplified version that is stampable, embossable, engravable, all of those things. So in that case, you want it to be a simple positive and negative image. A favicon or icon. In most cases, when we do websites, we have a 16 pixel, 32 pixel, 72 pixel, 116 pixel, 144 pixel, and then full size versions of people's logos. And that's just some of the things that we do when we do a responsive website. Those are the sizes that are required to make your site look good in all of the different variations, and to make sure that you've got an icon and things for every possible scenario, right? Okay, a single color version. Now this is really good for if you have a ice sculpture done or something like that. You want to make sure that everything is conveyed by shape, not by color. And once again, simplifying your colors also makes it a lot more upscale. So that's another good reason to do that. And you want to have a reversed version of your logo. We just went, in order to make our website look more current, we went from a light theme to a dark theme. The hardest part of that was coming up with a logo that would look good on a dark background. So having a reverse logo is really important. Our logo, which you see on the slide here, does not reverse very easily, so we had to put it on a gray background in order to make it make sense and be workable on a dark background. So you want to make sure you have that opportunity in case you ever want to do a black t-shirt or a black website or a black anything, that your logo doesn't get lost and it's not just a blob of white stuck on the middle of something, right?
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So once again, this episode was brought to you by our brand refresh service. And once again, we are offering that for free when you do our website refresh through the end of June of 2019. So if 2019 is a good year for you to refresh your brand and your website, and we do recommend it about every 3 years. We do our own about every 3 years. Mm-hmm. And most of our really active clients, we redo their website about once every 3 years in a minor or a major way, depending on how it fits with current technology and what's going on and everything else. So,
in fact, we had one client call us and say, "Can you fix my website?" We said, "Well, what's wrong with it?" Mm-hmm. And they said, "Well, we have clients calling in saying, we thought maybe you're out of business because your website hadn't changed."
Because your website hasn't changed in a million years. That it's really important to make sure that you're updating that. And sometimes it's not a big deal to update your website. In some cases, it's a matter of burning it down and starting over, depending on how much has changed how much technology has changed since the last time you updated your website. So it's a great time to consider that. If you would like to talk with us about your website, we can do some tests and see how it performs nowadays.
Yep.
If you want to do this yourself, you can download our design brief template, which is available on our website. It's in Microsoft Word. What it is it's an opportunity to capture all of your logos, all of your colors and your hex values and everything else, so that you have a design brief that you can hand to a contractor or to the people who are doing your trade show booth or the people that are doing your printing, and say, these are our design standards for our brand. Wells Fargo does it. All of the big companies do a design brief for their brand, And that's how they look so fabulous all the time, is because everybody that touches their brand or does anything with their brand has to comply with those guidelines that they set out, and that's how you get that consistency. So if you'd like to talk about your brand or your website, give us a call or hit that contact us button and schedule an appointment. We'd be happy to talk with you about any of that. No obligation, just like to catch up on what's new, what's news, what's working for you and what's not. And we look forward to having that conversation. Thanks for joining us and have a great week.
Have a great day.